Hey guys, welcome back to Say Mojo Homestead. I am at the greenhouse. The sun just shone in, but I am at the greenhouse. Jess, my friend, texted me and said some of the plants are looking a little struggly. So I came to check on them, and I had fertilized them last Friday before I left, and I made a super bad error, which I knew in the moment I shouldn't have done it, but I didn't have a way to measure our fertilizer, and I was running out of time. I had to get ready for competition, and I just went ahead and did it, and I shouldn't have, because in my poor measuring, I did over fertilize, and it did affect some of our seedlings. So I am replanting. It didn't affect everything. So thankfully, it didn't affect all of our peppers. There are definitely some that are still real struggly. So you can see like some of them are really like struggling. And I might try to transplant them, but some of them are doing fine. So we lost, maybe 3 or 4. The tomatoes also are struggling a little bit because of that. I cannot tell you how important it is to measure fertilizer. I knew in the moment that I shouldn't have done it, and I just did it anyway because I was in a hurry, and it was such a poor mistake. And yes, I will never do that again. The peppers were my biggest concern because peppers take the longest, especially your sweet peppers, take the longest to grow and to produce. Now, I did go ahead and replant more peppers because our goal on our homestead is to overwinter our peppers. So even if, like by replanting, we're 2 weeks out from our last frost date, it takes 2 weeks for them to germinate. They're not going to go in the ground on time. That's just the reality. Thankfully, I can start more in the greenhouse. And we'll be able to put them in the ground maybe a couple weeks after our frost date. But my biggest goal is to get these plants started and established, because now that we have the greenhouse, we will have a safe place to overwinter them, and hopefully we'll lose less of our peppers. We just haven't had a good system where they've been really protected from the cold. That was my biggest concern. We probably won't yield as many sweet peppers as we want. Hot peppers, they yield faster and more. So we always are overrun with hot peppers. It's the sweet peppers that we seem to go through and not have as many to use in the winter. I really like to make sure I have several that I can chop and freeze and we can use in soups or saute or whatever through the winter. And we just don't ever have as many as I would like. We definitely get a fair amount, but not as many as I like. So I did, excuse me, I did go ahead and replant peppers and tomatoes because the tomatoes will grow through November. And we succession plant anyway. We didn't lose all of our tomatoes. We lost a fair amount of them, but not all of them. So we will be able to plant those as well. And Jess said that I can have any of hers if I need them. The biggest thing with tomatoes, the reason why I really wanted to get them in the ground early, even though we do have a long growing season, is the more harvest I can get before we have any blight problems, the better. Because we will be set back a few weeks due to this, I will be pruning pretty heavily. Sometimes I leave the stem in the armpit just because I miss them, or we get busy and we don't get to prune them as consistently. So that leaves lots of room for blight. This year, my goal is to heavily prune consistently. So I'm gonna have to look over them every day and be in the garden every day. I'm just gonna have to be super intentional about it because I do not wanna lose these tomatoes to the blight. I have several goals for the garden and the produce. I want to be able to make salsa. I want to be able to freeze dry so we can have our own tomato paste. I want to be able to freeze tomatoes for chili. We want to be able to use fresh tomatoes. We want to be able to make pasta sauce. So it's going to be super important to me to stay on top of the pruning, especially now that we're set back, so that I can have as many tomatoes as I possibly can get. So my goal, like I said, is around 100 plants, tomato plants. I think between what we have that's survived my mishap and what we've replanted and what Jess said I can use and what I'm replanting again today. Yesterday I did all of our more of all of our heirloom slicers and some ox heart, because that's a good like sauce tomato and roasting tomato. I'm going to do 3 rows of Abe Lincoln or Roma. Those are more sauce paste tomatoes, more of a meaty tomato. I'll do 3 more rows of those. And then between that and what Jess has, I think we'll be okay. I just definitely want to share it with the world so no one makes the quick, hasty decision to not measure out their fertilizer and fertilize and over-fertilize, because it is detrimental to these plants. So it hurts. I'm sad about it. It makes me very, very sad, but all is not lost, thankfully. And we're just going to keep going, because that's what you have to do. There are always setbacks in gardening. In anything you do, there are setbacks. And so moving forward is the important thing. You know, can't give up. Got to keep working forward. And hopefully we'll still have a garden that produces what we need. And thankfully we have the greenhouse, so we can, if we need to, we can extend our growing time a little bit. Ultimately, I know we'll have what we need. And if we have to spend another year where we don't put up quite as much and we're eating in season, that won't be detrimental either. We did last year. I kind of have a personal goal of trying to eat in season anyway. The tomatoes are just the big thing, because spaghetti is a real quick, easy meal. And I like to have access to those tomatoes all year round. And I cannot buy tomatoes from the grocery store. Okay, I'm back in the greenhouse for another update to check on them again. It looks like about 80% of what I transplanted is doing fine. I wanted to talk a little bit about what I did to transplant these to try to save them. What I did was I pulled them out of the soil that had the fertilizer in it. I got as much of that soil off as possible, and I replanted them in either the same trays that had been cleared of the dirt and rinsed out, or in some of Jess's cups that she had laying around, because obviously I couldn't clean out all the cells because I had plants in some of them still. So basically I got rid of any of the soil that was moldy or any of the plants that did not look like they were going to make it. And then the plants that were kind of struggling but looking like there was a hope for them, I cleared everything off of them, all the soil off of them. I transplanted them into good soil, and then I watered them, and I've just been keeping an eye on them. And all was not lost. We do have a fair amount that made it. So that was good. I was able to save a good portion of what I had planted, and then I've just replanted. I did sow some more pepper seeds, some more tomato seeds, because I want so many tomato plants. And I also today I planted some basil, because that was something that in the craziness of trying to save our seedlings and trying to figure out what we needed to replant, I forgot to plant my basil. So I went ahead and planted some basil today. I did a culinary blend basil, a cinnamon basil, and then some basil. Our goal is to have as much basil as we can kind of around the garden to help with pest control, and to have just for like tomatoes and for freeze drying. I've really enjoyed having our freeze dried basil available throughout the year. And so it has kept really well. It's kept its flavor really well. I've really enjoyed having it in the kitchen. So we had plenty of plants last year, and I think we only had like 8 to 10. This year I want to have a lot more for the pest control, but I also want to have even more to be able to freeze dry, because we only freeze dried about 3 jars, and I want to have even more to put in sauces and stuff. I've kind of been using it sparingly. I want to be able to have extra. Also would love to be able to like give some to people. I'll be planting another tray of basil, and I will probably be planting some more calendula because I want to use that to infuse oil to use with our soaps. So it's been exciting in the greenhouse, kind of seeing things that, seeing that all is not lost, and that plants are resilient, like people are resilient, and they can bounce back. And it was just encouraging for me to come in and be able to find everything not totally dead. In the midst of losing some of our seedlings, we did not lose everything. So that was encouraging. And it's still early. We can still plant. We can still do seedlings. We might not yield as many sweet peppers this year, but several of the peppers are still okay. So it's definitely something that I want you guys to learn from me. Don't be hasty. Don't be crunched for time and do something that you know you shouldn't be doing, and definitely measure your fertilizer. I cannot say that enough. It just is not worth it to just do a quick eyeball and try to get it marked off your to-do list. It's worth it to take the time and do it right. We will be able to have all of the plants that we need and not have to purchase plants. And we'll be able to have all the variety of plants that we want, the variety of produce that we want. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. I hope you have a great week and be blessed.